Hello? What? It's for you. But, as you don't live here anymore...
What?
Absolutely. Do you know what this is? This is an H2206, authorising the compulsory, temporary requisitioning of this flat for unnecessary repairs.
Repairs? What?
Oh! Don't forget your receipt.
Don't forget your receipt.
I'm sorry, but I'm a bit of a stickler for paperwork.
Bastards!
Wow. I really feel for you, Sam. I mean, have you seen all the stuff I have to sign just to get into college? It's somewhere in the 20th century, and mankind has fallen victim to bureaucracy. A confusing maze of red tape and regulation puts down citizens, and as if that wasn't bad enough, the judicial system has been eliminated, making government rule absolutely unstoppable. Most of the time. You see two problems. One, a 13-year terrorist bombing campaign, and the other, a man wrongfully prosecuted by a bug in the system, threatened government authority. Enter Sam Lowry, a diligent but aimless worker bee who stumbles upon the wrongfully accused man while trying to fix an error for his boss, a regular demand of his job. When he goes to cover up the incident, he finds a mysterious woman that might be the wonderful temptress he's seen in his dreams. While all of these elements are of great curiosity to Sam, his close friends in high places warn him that he might be poking his nose too deep. This government, after all, has more than a few mistakes they want quiet. Brazil is the brainchild of cartoonist-turned-director Terry Gilliam of Monty Python fame, who brings his unique sense of color and imagery to the screen surprisingly well. The stripped-down technology, the fantastical dream imagery, and the bizarre set design all lend themselves to someone with a fantastical, cartoonish, and exaggerated visual style. As well, the practical effects, of which there are many, give the film a certain timeless charm that you don't see in a lot of fantasy pictures today. Beyond his own cartoon roots, Gilliam also drew inspiration from noir films, classic science fiction, and all sorts of other influences to create a world that feels at once familiar and original enough to make a wonderfully memorable parallel universe. With the attention to detail and style, you can really buy that a world like Brazil could exist, which is an important trait for any work of dystopic fiction. Insofar as the soundtrack, Brazil is all over the place. For some reason, the scores of Vertigo, Blade Runner, and Naked Lunch popped into my head, but that's only the lilting sax and passionate ballads talking. There are still a number of smaller, quirkier musical themes at work, and they give the film an almost anxious pulse to it, which fits perfectly with the atmosphere and ideas. One more thing I'd like to comment, I like the use of Orwellian posters in the film. They're a background detail that you notice in your second or third viewing, but they're often symbolic of the somewhat unexplored repression of commoners. So, just a tip, look out for as many of them as possible. If you're a fan of British acting, you're going to find a lot to like in Brazil. Jonathan Pryce plays average Joe Sam Lowry, Catherine Hemmold plays Sam's superficial, status-obsessed mother, Ian Holm plays Mr. Kurtzman, Sam's boss, Bob Hoskins of Who Framed Roger Rabbit fame plays one of the duct repairmen, and even Monty Python veteran Michael Palin plays Sam's friend Jack Lind. With such a distinctly British ensemble, I find it clever that Gilliam chose to cast Americans Kim Greist and, oddly enough, Robert De Niro as the anarchists. Their lack of accents make them stand out amongst the crowd and bring extra attention to their characters, which is, fitting for what they stand for. Speaking of accents, and I'm just going to throw it out there, this is the type of film you might want to watch with subtitles. That's not to say the accents are overwhelming, but occasionally key bits of information can be lost amidst foreign voices. It's not a deal breaker, but it's a consideration, and fans of British television will probably have no problem. Other than that, acting is solid all around. I'm going to cut it straight with you. Brazil is the most anarchistic film I have ever seen. Gilliam has a clear dislike for bureaucratic organization, hierarchical government systems, what he sees as needless technology, and most reverentially, procedure. His film boldly claims that all of these things, despite how they've helped us in the past, are now slowly suppressing the human spirit. And there's a lot of evidence to support this interpretation. For example, Brazil's bureaucratic organization, the Ministry of Information, is seen as tyrannical, ruling over common people with complicated forms and catch-22s. It's also heavily implied that the higher-ups are blithering idiots, as they never seem to know what they're doing, or much of anything for that matter, and even need yes-no decision scales to make day-to-day work-related choices. These people are running things. Conversely, the government is seen as a bully, only there to arrest, constantly blame-shifting, and never caring about the well-being of its citizens. Nowhere is this more evident than the handling of that wrongfully accused man I mentioned earlier, who's bounced around so many different departments that he's eventually killed by mistake, an event the government willfully never tells his wife or kids about in risk of looking bad. Cold bastards. Similarly, the technology in the film is portrayed as flawed, in constant need of repair, and often complicating the lives of citizens more than helping. The absurd duct situation in Sam's apartment portrays this perfectly. And finally, nearly everything in the film is hampered by some absurd and unnecessary procedure, from Sam's symbolic quest to find the woman in his dreams, an obvious symbol for happiness, to the literal medical procedure that leaves a poor old woman permanently in face bandages. All of these things lead to constant misery in the lower classes, which can be seen in Sam's dreams and the common resort to escapism in simple, romanticized Hollywood films. In this world, human vitality and decency has been crushed, and even younger generations are affected, as they enact the terrible crimes the government commits as fun games on the street. So with all of these horrors of modern civilization satirized, what does Brazil offer us as an alternative? Well, a world free of these things, wherein the human spirit is allowed to flourish and grow uncontrollably, in any which direction, so as not to need the petty escapism of a movie or dream to feel freedom, but to live in it constantly, without any form of repression. So, basically, like I said before, anarchism. And is this practical? No. But it's interesting, and a ballsy theme for any film to have. Before I go, there are 3 motifs I'd like to explain, and this is only because they reoccur a lot in the film. Christmas iconography, baby masks, and ducts. The Christmas imagery is there to be ironic, as goodwill towards man is not being practiced here, and acts as another shallow, materialistic comfort for Brazil's people. The baby masks, which are only worn by authority figures, signify the helplessness of people in the system, as they are unable to defend themselves. This idea is cross-symbolized later when Sam finds his own helpless face in the intimidating samurai, who represents a system of law and order. And lastly, the ducts, which are government-regulated, represent the far reach of technology and government in people's lives. Normally I wouldn't comment about these things this late in the review, but they are everywhere in this film, and I'd feel wrong if I didn't mention them somewhere. I like to call Brazil the greatest film you've never heard of. The pacing can be a little slow at times, but stick with it, and you're bound to see one of the most unique fantasy films ever made. Please give this one a watch.